Good evening, everybody. Hell's Unicorn here once again, and I just wanted to talk a little bit on a couple of particular subjects. The first one, obviously, being recent current events. As many of you may already know, there was basically a crack-up in the U.S. House of Representatives, and Barack Obama's first attempt at inching his way towards the fictional political center essentially backfired on him, as congressional leaders in the Democratic Party decided that we don't compromise, or at least in their terms, that's what they're saying, that they don't compromise. I don't compromise either, but that's neither here nor there at this point. Essentially, we have Nancy Pelosi flexing her muscles as the newly elected minority leader. It's pretty amazing that in the United States Democratic Party, if you fail at something, apparently you're rewarded with being reappointed to a leadership position and given the opportunity to be a thorn in the side of somebody who is up even higher than you, in this case being the president. It's utterly humorous to watch for many reasons. To all of you who might be a little bit irritated at this, you're worried that your taxes are going up, let me just say this. You need to break a couple of eggs in order to have an omelet. I know that's an old lie, and that lie could be used to excuse a lot of terrible stuff. I'm not even going to get into what its implications are when applied to things such as war and peace, but in this particular context, it is actually a very good thing, and I will tell you why. There is a fundamental thing that everybody, be you conservative, liberal, libertarian, or what have you, need to understand about Barack Obama. He is a compulsive liar and a slick, double-dealing opportunist. He is essentially also an ideologue, but he is very much a pragmatist, which means that he's willing to go to whatever means he can in order to perpetuate his own continued leadership and the ideology that he espouses. And what does this entail? This entails occasionally going along with ideas that he ordinarily wouldn't in order to further the end that he seeks. And of course, in his case, the end always justifies the means, no matter how terrible the means is. Let me elaborate further. It is a well-known and established fact that the Democratic Party suffered a humiliatingly and utterly overwhelming defeat in the recent election. And apparently it seems that Barack Obama is the only one who understands the ramifications of this defeat and has decided to do a little bit of triangulating in the, I guess, with the end game of obtaining his own reelection and hopefully bringing the numbers back up a little bit in the House and Senate, hold on to the Senate in that particular case. And this is exactly the same strategy that Bill Clinton employed. And just like Bill Clinton, it was very much, and do not doubt me on this, Barack Obama's intention, in order to perpetuate the lie once again, that lower taxes, I'm not going to say tax cuts because everybody say that, just lower taxes do not encourage economic growth. It is a lie down to the core, but it is a lie that they cling to with a religious fervor. So we simply have to face facts here. They do not believe in the concept of a government that is smaller and more efficient. They believe in a government that is bloated, that is involved in every aspect of our lives, and one that is not efficient, but nonetheless always and ever-presently sufficient, despite the bare minimum level in which it is sufficient and the way that it tears down those who accomplish in order to maintain those who do not. Long story short, it was Barack Obama's intention to pass what is not a tax cut, but an extension of an existing tax cut, ergo keeping things exactly the same in order to avoid further economic downturn. Nonetheless, this will not encourage any form of growth, and thus Obama can in 2 years say, well, you see, everybody, we tried it their way, and it just doesn't work. You understand? It just doesn't work. The American people, they just need to understand that this, this tax cut business, this people, earning more and keeping it, it just doesn't work. You got to understand, I need to take more of your money so that I can continue to screw this economy up and lie to you and tell you that things are getting better. That's basically his mentality, and that is my best imitation of his voice. I know I don't have a naturally deep voice like him, so it's very difficult for me to get that exactly right, but I think I'm fairly close on that. So what's going to happen is that Obama's attempt to triangulate in the early stages, when the lame duck Congress is still in session, have proven to be an utter failure. His own worst enemy seems to be the ideologues in his own party. This is very similar to the problem that Stalin faced with opposition from Trotsky when he decided that he wanted to employ certain market practices in order to sustain a country that was literally falling apart, this being the Soviet Union. And of course, naturally, in order to prevail, Stalin had to take care of Trotsky and the other so-called purist communists, as it were, in order to employ his own brand of fascistic communism, which is more comparable on many levels to what Obama preaches, although Obama preaches it in a much more restrained and diluted fashion, since if he talked about it openly the way I think he ultimately believed in it, there would be a revolution tomorrow. So to sum up, this little fiasco that took place in Congress was an absolute laugh fest, and it was also a godsend. View it as that, and view it as nothing else, because that's simply what it is. And I have a link in the description to The Hill, which has an article describing exactly what's going on in Congress. It is a complete and utter circus, and I am utterly amused. Now, switching gears a little bit here and talking about another matter. In my last video, I went through the issue of the incompatibility between statist socialism and or communism. I didn't use that word, but that's what was implied, and Christianity. And I supplied verses to basically bolster my view. Now, since that time, I've had, a few sort of a brief talk, I'll just put it that way, with Smarter Than You Are Able. He put up a comment that was a little bit off topic, in which he talked about the fact that he is currently on Social Security disability insurance, and he is collecting for that, and he has received criticism for that from both sides. He gets criticism from it from jerks like Louis Arrighi, who is a nobody, know-nothing liberal commentator here on YouTube that I utterly hate. Him and I had a brief sort of a stint together as political allies in the early days of the Ron Paul campaign, when he was under the rather crazy impression that Ron Paul was some sort of liberal that would support big government policies. Big government policies basically go both ways in the fake political paradigm that we have. Conservatives believe in big military or big guns, and Democrats believe in big welfare states or big butter, as it were. I believe in neither of those. I believe in something far different. And during my conversation with Smarter Than You Are Able, who is a man who I respect a lot and whom I would not support, having his insurance taken away, I'm just simply going to get into my philosophy on this. As far as I see it, the hardline sort of anarchistic libertarians and the Glenn Beck crowd, who constantly dump on people who collect benefits, they kind of miss a very fundamental point here, and this is a point that I've understood, and this is one of the reasons why I can forgive things like Ron Paul putting earmarks into bills and then voting against them. When you have a situation where you have worked very hard and a good portion of the money you make is being taken without your consent, but then it is later given back to you, I would argue that only a fool, someone without a single sense of prudence, would say no to that. The fact is that regardless to whether Smarter Than You Are Able supports the Social Security system or not, it's still his money. And, from what I understand, he does support the concept of Social Security disability insurance. I'm not really opposed to the concept of disability insurance. The only thing I oppose is having it done at the federal government level, because I think it's woefully inefficient and I think it's vulnerable to all kinds of corruption. We've seen that with the way that spending takes place in Washington and how inflationary printing is being used to offset this. And as a result, eventually, the whole of Social Security is going to become insolvent. And then people like Smarter Than You Are Able are going to be up the creek without a paddle, because they're not going to have any benefits, and because of their condition, it is very difficult for them to find any kind of work that they can do to bring in the necessary income to sustain themselves. My standpoint is very simple. There is a necessity for charity, and there is a time and a place where it is very much appropriate. But in Smarter Than You Are Abel's case, it's not really charity. I mean, he told me very clearly that he worked very hard for much of his life, and indeed during about 20 years of that time, he was already suffering the pains of his current disability. There is no reason whatsoever why anybody should lay guilt trips on him or call him a hypocrite because he has certain views about government and yet he's collecting benefits from them. Those benefits are actually his property. They've been withheld from him, in my opinion, immorally by doing so against his will, but they are still his, and he has every right to collect them. And by the same standard, those idiot liberals like Mr. Origi, who tell him that he's being a hypocrite because he is criticizing the system because it's probably inefficient, are also confuted. Both of you need to understand that that money is his actual real property. He earned it, it was withheld from him, and he's now collecting it. He need not feel any guilt over it, and I, for one, am not going to lay any guilt trips on him, regardless of whether or not we agree on the concept of federally funded disability insurance. I do support the concept of a general promotion of the general welfare, which is included in the Constitution, but I have a very different definition of what constitutes general welfare than I think most statist leftists do. My view on it is very simple. There is a matter of necessity in which either the church or the state can step in and offer assistance, and that necessity must be present. I don't support a system where everybody between the president of Panhandlers of America and Bill Gates get the same benefits from the system. That's utterly ridiculous. Mr. Gates doesn't need benefits. I would argue that Mr. Gates should not be punished with higher taxes for his accomplishments, but I think that, like everybody else, he should be paying into the system if he's receiving any benefits. And one of these benefits obviously includes his security and his ability to continue conducting his business while in the United States. And this brings up another important issue. When I say that I support free market practices, I'm not talking about free market practices where the government or even individuals are prohibited from helping each other out without an actual exchange of goods or services. I do believe in the concept of charity. But what I am saying is that the state, the government, has no business levying taxes specifically for the purpose of manipulating the economy. This is the distinction that needs to be made between my view of what the government should be doing versus what the political right and the political left of today are suggesting. Both of them suggest in different ways that the tax code should be crafted in order to encourage the economy. As far as I see it, the economy is completely independent of the state and the government. The government deals with those things specifically which are not of the economy. Issues of war and peace, issues of diplomacy, official issues of the state specifically. And for that, there needs to obviously be some funding. So therefore, my view of taxation follows as such. The method of taxation that should be utilized should be such that it has no impact on economic function. Funds need to be procured, so they should be done in a fashion that is the least invasive to people's economic liberties and to people's civil liberties. So obviously, the communistic progressive income tax needs to go. I'm not a big fan of consumption taxes either, unless they are equally apportioned and they are low in amount. In fact, the only system of taxation that I would really support genuinely would be a rather small-sized tariff, and the rate would be much lower than the tariffs that other countries are charging for our goods. We would still be importing, but we would also be producing ourselves, and we would be able to be competitive. Most of the reason why this economy is not doing well is because we've granted certain favorable status to other nations. But that's another discussion altogether. So anyway, that will conclude my thoughts for this time around. So, until next time, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.